Hello. I just got off work and I realized today I wanted to talk about my job because my job was a little bit of an experiment. So I realized I am more than likely, for convenience's sake, I just say I'm autistic, but the evidence is very damning. I'll say that. I took the RASAR test over a year ago, and um, it gave me the opportunity to reflect a lot on my experiences just existing in this world. And yeah, me having autism just makes a lot of sense. And it's been something that I've been really just accepting this past year, realizing and accepting. I know there's a little bit of controversy with self-diagnosing yourself, but it has really changed my life for the better and has allowed me to have a lot more grace with myself, a lot more compassion. So the diagnosis itself just allowed me to feel like finally like there was nothing wrong with me. It goes really deep and I could honestly do another video on that. But yeah, part of what made me, or what like reaffirmed that I had autism, was working at a very overstimulating place, a place that I actually just made a video about yesterday. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, I was working at this place and I was becoming more familiar with the concept of masking and realized that that was something I was doing constantly at this place. I mean, there was over 100 people working at this place, and it wasn't only masking with all the customers, but also with all the people I was working with. And I wasn't at a place where I was comfortable to just stop masking altogether, but I realized the reason why I was so exhausted and so drained and was reaching the point of a breakdown, which ultimately I ended up having, was because I was autistic. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about my experience at my current job. So currently I work as a baker, and the reason why I decided to become a baker is because I was looking up, after realizing I was autistic and after this experience I had at this other workplace, I was like, what is a job that's suitable for someone with autism? And everywhere I would look, people would say baking. Especially if you like working with your hands. People were always like, baking is great for autistic people. And I can only speak from my experiences. Every baking job is going to be different, but I think the answer to is that true is it depends, which of course is not simple. It's not black and white. It'd be so much easier if it was, but the reality is all baking jobs are different. They have different styles of, like, different types of baking. I don't do pastry baking. I don't know what other types there are, but I do like bread, and cookies, brownies, what else? Flatbreads, focaccia. So it's a production job. And the thing with baking is that when I was looking for baking jobs in my area, the pay was really low. Like, it was below minimum wage, which I know there's like laws that allow small businesses to do that, but it was just nuts how many businesses were paying so little for a baking position. So I finally found one that was paying way better than all these other places. And I think that contributes to the experience that I'm having at my baking job, because the production needs, my pay, my compensation reflects how busy the business is, tips. So everybody in front of house and back of house at the place I work at gets paid the same. There's a tip pool. So getting paid more is reflecting how busy the business is. So that is something to keep in mind with my experience. But that aside, like, I had never had a production job before. It was more like, I don't know the official or like the technical term for it, but it was jobs that were using me for like my head and my brain rather than my body. And when I say like my head and my brain, I mean like customer service stuff, like that's included in that. So this was like, I haven't only worked customer service jobs, but there's always been a very strong emphasis on like not physical things, if that makes sense. It's more mental things. So to have a job where my performance is evaluated based on, wait, that's not right. Where how well I'm doing is evaluated based on, like, why am I blanking on this? It's just a very physical job. So I think if you're an autistic person who happens to already be super athletic, able to lift really heavy things, a baking job could be amazing. And also just have like really good, like, like a really high tolerance in terms of like using your hands, because I always thought of myself as someone who loved to work with their hands. And yeah, when I heard about this idea of like baking jobs are good for autistic people, I was like, wow, that totally makes sense. I could work with my hands. I don't have to put on this mask. I wow, my mind literally went blank just then. What else? Yeah, it just felt like it was going to be like a great fit, even though like no job is really perfect, but I was like, this seems like this might be my thing. And the physical toll it's had on my body has been really challenging, which has like some benefits because it has forced me to get into a stretching routine and really make sure I'm taking care of my body, getting enough sleep, which I still don't always succeed at, but it kind of becomes non-negotiable when you're waking up at, for me, I wake up at 3:30 a.m. My shifts start at 5 a.m. So that's not even like the craziest a baking job can get. I think any earlier would probably be too extreme for me, but I try to be in bed by 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m., which is really challenging. Like, I historically, ever since I was a kid, would always stay up late. I was always a night owl. I would go to bed at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. So it's definitely been a shift but I think it actually has helped me a lot, and I actually don't mind the sleep schedule. But I just think for autistic people looking for a job that they that would be a good fit, you really have to keep in mind the physical, like the physical considerations of, can your body actually handle this type of job where you're lifting, like at a production baking job, it's not like a small mixing bowl. Of course, it's this really heavy bowl. I think it's like 20 or 30 pounds, but then we'll put like dough in it, so it ends up being, it's like 50 pounds, 40 pounds, which is no problem for some people, but that's a lot for me as someone who doesn't really have this athletic foundation. So yeah, just adjusting to it has, it's been a challenge. Yeah, like I was saying, my pay reflects how busy the bakery is. So because where I work is so busy, it's not just a bakery too, it's like food, and I work with actually a pretty large team. I mean, the baking team itself is like, oh my god, I don't even know. I think it's like 6 or 7 people total, but you don't work with them all in one day. It's like 4 to 5 people per day. So although that team is small, I'm still working around like their prep cooks. I work around a lot of prep cooks. So this job has actually been a great opportunity for me to forego masking. I mean, I won't lie, I still mask sometimes, and I do think the mask demands compared to a customer service job is less, but the nature of working with people is that there's always going to, it's always going to feel like there's this pressure to not come off rude or off-putting or unsettling, but like even though it's a production job, I think there are some baking positions for smaller bakeries where it's just one person, you're just working alone all the time, and that is not how the bakery I work at operates. So I think, of course, that would be a completely different experience. But yeah, for me, I am working around people. So there are people on the baking team who will talk the whole time. Or they'll talk like for a large chunk, like as they're like shaping bread together, which is like a couple hours at least every time, and there will be people who will talk the whole time. So you're still going to have to be around people who might have really high social needs, and you have to be okay with like, I just, when you're a people pleaser, like, this isn't just related to my autism. I think there's like multiple sources of it for me, but I do think part of it is related to my autism, where it's like I want to be like easygoing to be around, especially in a workplace. But or like maybe you want to be that person who is the fun person to chat with. But my experience as someone who's autistic, and I guess everything else about me, I'm an introvert. Like, I want a job where I can work and not talk the whole time. And some days I do want to talk, right? And then there's opportunities for that, but some days I really don't want to. And being okay with maybe looking weird by being quiet for hours on end. And yeah, just the nature of any job where you're working with like a bunch of different people is that there's different personalities, and some people you're not going to like your autism or your neurodivergence or just like your personality isn't going to mesh well. So there are still some people that I work with where it's like not really comfortable to have a conversation with them. But for me, being aware of my neurodivergence allows me to be like, okay, it's not my fault, it's not their fault. I don't need to take it personally, they don't need to take it personally. Like, you guys just don't mesh, and it is what it is. And yeah, this is my first time like really working in a kitchen like this, and there are some strong personalities that I think kitchens attract, and I think the one I work in, based on what I've heard about other people's experiences in kitchens, is probably pretty mild, but there's still some quirky people, and it's like, I'm quirky, but it's in a different way. So yeah, just understand that if you want to be paid a livable wage to be a baker, there's probably going to be some, you might have to be in an environment that isn't very autistic friendly. I guess if there was like a range of how autistic friendly a work environment could be, it would be like more in, where this is super friendly, this is like what did I call it yesterday? Autistic hell. Kind of a mid-range in between. And of course it depends how like your autism manifests, but I think it's just one of those instances where it's like there isn't really a perfect solution. There isn't really a perfect job, at least not a job where you're like working for another person, where, I mean, I'm saying this, I think it really depends on what your interests are, because I think, like, let's say you're someone who is really into like coding, right? There's, I think, from what I understand, that's a pretty like solitary job. Like you could spend a lot of time in solitude, and probably not have to deal with a lot of socializing. So that just happens to work out for you, which is really cool. But yeah, based on your interests, like it is challenging finding a job that works, that feels good, that doesn't feel like you're sacrificing something or having to be someone that you're not as someone with autism. It's really challenging. And, you know, I'm remaining open-minded, but I think I say that challenging part, and I did mention this before, but I want to re-emphasize it. Finding a place with a livable wage, is the challenge, where you could probably find, like, if all jobs in the world were paid the same, right? I think there's probably a good number of like fairly autistic friendly jobs, but it's the money part. It's like that's the whole reason why we're here in the first place, right? Which is unfortunate and it's sad. But yeah, I think I just wanted to talk about this specifically because I was out here watching the TikToks, like, I'm trying to like imitate the voice. 24 autism friendly job. That's not the voice. You know what I'm talking about. It's like that robot lady. Like, people would make these lists and these compilations, and it's like, yes, on the surface, like I would see florists too. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I would love to get a florist job, but none of these nurseries don't really hire that often, and they don't really pay a lot. And it's like, I get that people want to create this big list so that people can feel liberated, and liberation should absolutely still be the dream. I have to believe that's possible, you know, to feel fulfilled and to survive and exist and do things that we love and make enough money to do them, right? But it's like these big lists, like I feel like these people making these lists haven't worked all these jobs, you know? So it's like, I get it. I get they're trying to help people, but you have to also be really honest. And I think my experience at this job kind of opens up this bigger discussion of like regarding disabilities. And I mean, not everyone feels empowered by viewing like their neurodivergence as a disability. I feel like I try to regard it in a very neutral way, where it's like, oh my god. I mean, okay, now we're getting into like language and stuff, which does add it makes it very complicated. But basically, like, it's really, really messed up for someone who like already has like a disability that's not visible or that's like more mental, and then to also like, wow, where like the price for them trying to find a job that works for them is to develop like a physical disability, like carpal tunnel syndrome. Like, that is messed up to me, where it's like, because of the world we're built in, like, it feels like so many jobs require you to be harming yourself in some sort of way, where like, for me, as someone who is like high masking, a lot of the time, I guess. I can work at a customer service job, but it is really, really challenging for my mental health. But then for me to work at a production job, it's like, well, now it's my physical health being targeted. And that is just not right. And it is how, like, life is, how, like, the workplace, what am I trying to say? How jobs are set up under capitalism, at least, like, capitalism at its state right now. But it's not right, and I think we do need to keep that in mind, and we can, like, continue to do what we need to do to survive under these conditions, but also acknowledge that it shouldn't be like this. And I think this is where the importance of dreaming really comes in. So yeah, there's so many different pieces to this, and so many deeper conversations that are tied to what I'm talking about right now. Um, but yeah, I didn't create any notes for this. This is really me just speaking freely. I just find I'm not great with notes. Um, Even though that can make things probably a little more concise. Um, but yeah, if there's any questions, any clarification that's needed, from my experience working as a baker, as someone with autism, let me know, because again, my experience is only limited to what I've had at this very specific job. But if anyone wants more insight, I would absolutely be happy to share. And on top of that, I actually do want to make another video for people who are bakers, um, talking about what I do to, like, make sure I'm taking care of myself. So, like, my stretching routines, specifically because when you're someone who, I mean, we all use our hands a lot, but like someone who likes to journal, someone who likes to draw, someone who likes to make art, even someone who likes to cook, like, okay, it can be actually terrifying when you work at a job and your hands and your wrists begin hurting. Um, and yeah, I have found a few videos talking about stretches for bakers, but I do want to show, like, my full routine at the moment, and also, like, other things I've done to protect my well-being at my job, because it's just really important. And I know what I do isn't going to help everyone, it's not going to work for everyone, but if I can at least provide a little bit of assistance to someone, I think that would make me feel very pleased. So on that note, thanks for tuning in. Again, leave any questions if you have them. If you don't have any questions and you're just here in solidarity, I see you and I feel you. Okay, bye-bye.